My name is Brian Thiry. I'm the Director of Strategic Engagement here at ReliabilityFirst. I'm celebrating my 12-year anniversary here at RF. Before that, I spent 11 years at First Energy. And at First Energy, if you're watching at home, thank you so much for the tour of the Center for Advanced Energies Technologies yesterday. It was excellent. Thank you so much for your cooperation and your participation with us. So once again, my name is Brian Thiry. I'm the Director of Strategic Engagement. I work with Diane, Courtney, Catherine, and Michelle regarding all of our state outreach and all of our, I'll call it normal outreach as well. So we have a monthly webinar, Tech Talk with RF. Kristen mentioned it. Please follow us on LinkedIn, subscribe to our newsletters, all of these types of things. But today I'm going to talk to you about something really special because it was a role I used to have at ReliabilityFirst. It was event analysis. And then we're going to have a little bit of fun. Today we're going to be operators for a day. So we're going to step into a control room. Don't worry, it's a simulator, so we're not going to really black out anything or have any outages. But I spent about 7 years of my career, of my 11 at First Energy, in a control room environment. Think of it like air traffic controllers, monitoring the flow of electricity to and from, opening and closing breakers. We're going to have a lot of fun because all the risks that Diane talked about, we're going to see how those manifest themselves on the grid and how operators respond and react in real time. So first things first, let me tell a little story because that's how I like to start off all my presentations. So back in 2003, when I first started at First Energy, Diane mentioned and Michelle mentioned as well, we're celebrating, well, not celebrating, but it's been 23 years since the August 14th blackout. I had been at First Energy for about 3 or 4 months at the time because I just graduated from The Ohio State University and everything was going great. And I showed up and there's this blackout. If you look at the top left picture, my friends used to call that the Gulf of Canada because that was the 50 million people in Ohio, Pennsylvania, New York, around Lake Erie that were all without power for a couple of days. So back in 2003, we started asking the question, is the grid reliable? If you remember studying the FERC blackout in the FERC report, they would talk about the 3 T's, tools, transmission, and trees. All the technologies, the EMS SCADA outages, the trees that, hit some power lines between Akron and Cleveland, and the cascading blackout. And as Michelle and Diane mentioned, we had voluntary standards. We're moving to a new space with the Energy Policy Act with mandatory reliability standards. If the utilities are not doing the right things, cutting their trees, cybersecurity, all those things, all the penalties and enforcement that Kristen talked about. So is the grid reliable? For the last 23 years, we've done a pretty good job. We've learned a lot about risks. If you look at the State of Reliability report, but there's no time to rest. So let me get into that. So around 2014, we started asking the question, is the grid resilient? If you remember 2014, we were hit by an event called the polar vortex. Very, very cold, very snowy, extreme temperatures, -20 wind chill. A lot of generators didn't show up for work that day. So is the grid resilient? Can we withstand and respond to events on the system? At the time, PJM in particular had a lot of high margins. We had a lot of, I'll call it extra generation. That's extra generation that we don't have as much of today and we don't think we'll have as much of in the future. But is the grid resilient? Can we withstand and respond to different events on the system, whether it's extreme weather, whether it's a cyber attack, whether it's a misoperation? Also in the 2010s, we started asking the question, is the grid secure? So if you think about the early days of the internet and cybersecurity, it was like, we have to protect our data and people are trying to hack us and steal things from us. But around 2010, there was an attack called Stuxnet, where now all of a sudden the cyber attacks are attacking our operational systems. Now, this wasn't even like a US attack. It was like an attack in Iran. But we started seeing our adversaries going after our operational systems. Like, can they hack our systems, open and close breakers, turn off generators, our operational technologies? We saw this again in around 2015 with Russia and Ukraine, where Russia did a cyber attack on Ukraine, took over their EMS SCADA systems. When we say EMS, energy management systems, SCADA is system control and data acquisitions. These are the computer systems in the control room that the operators use to open and close breakers and to control the system. We're actually going to get into that in our simulation. But in 2015, Russia hacks Ukraine's EMS, and for the poor operator on the desk, they're watching their mouse move across the screen, opening and closing things. And they go, Michelle, is that you? And you go, no, that's not me. Is that you? No, that's not me. All of a sudden, from what I've been told, I wasn't there. They start pulling cords out of the wall. They start unplugging things because they're like, we don't know what's happening, and they're starting to turn off things. So this whole idea of SIP and critical infrastructure protection, and we evolved the standards. We called it SIP v5. The ways we protect our infrastructure in the control room, at generating plants, at substations. Then in the 2010s, we started asking, is the grid clean and sustainable? A lot of states had renewable portfolio standards and mandates. States wanted to be either net zero or decarbonize a certain 10% or 20% or 50% by 2030 or 40. And we started seeing this advent of more and more renewable generation onto the system. And it always depended on how you defined it, clean or sustainable. Was it only renewables? Nuclear has no carbon emissions. Is this how different states had different rules? So we started integrating these resources onto the system. We started adding wind and solar. And we started to learn from California and Texas how these systems interacted with the systems we already had. How did they interact with the coal, the natural gas, the nuclear, the traditional, we call them the synchronous spinning machines we already had. And how do we get those systems to, lack of a better word, play nice with each other? The two questions that come up all the time are the bottom right. Is the grid affordable? We've seen energy prices go up. We could spend an entire day, an entire workshop on affordability. It is complicated. Luckily, my name is ReliabilityFirst, and I don't have to worry as much as the policymakers have to worry about, but it is a very serious and real issue that policymakers have to worry about. We have seen rates go up. It is complicated. It is supply and demand in the capacity auction. It is supply chain. It is inflation. It is geopolitical events like Russia, Ukraine, and Strait of Hormuz that are impacting natural gas prices. It is all of these things that are impacting our prices across the board. I wish it was one thing, we'd be able to fix it. It is a lot of different things, but affordability is a big deal. Energy poverty is a big deal. Reliability for us comes first and foremost, but if you can't afford electricity, then you don't have reliability. So is the grid affordable? And the other question we get now, and probably until the end of the time, is the grid scalable? As we add more things to the grid, whether it be data centers, whether it be crypto, whether it be the new things that we're not even talking about, quantum computing, we're going to have EVs and plug those in. Is the grid scalable? For the last 2 decades, load growth has been relatively flat. We've had energy efficiency, we've had some DERs, we've had some rooftop solar. Load growth has been relatively flat. But as Michelle showed in her chart, it's like a hockey stick. It's going through the roof if this data center and these large loads materialize like these forecasts suggest. The challenge we're facing, it's a lot of fun at dinner parties. Now I like to think that I am fun at dinner parties. People do like to talk shop about all these issues. You see it on TV, you see it in the news. Electric policy is at the heart of all of these things. So that's my story. So let's get into this. So this is the NERC risk framework. We actually had to submit this to FERC of like, what do you do here at NERC? And yes, we audit and enforce reliability standards. And yes, we do outreach. But ultimately, our job is to take risk off the system, especially unnecessary risks off the system. I mean, if UFOs invade and there's, outer space aliens, I can't take that risk off the system. But there's a lot of risks we can take off the system. So if you start on this wheel, let's start at the top. Risk identification and validation. So we are always monitoring and looking for risks. And this is really through Diane's engineering department. So she has 2 departments. One is event analysis and situational awareness, and the other one is Johnny's engineering department that you'll hear from Johnny later today. So we are running assessments. You will hear the word assessment a million times. Assessments are studies. Johnny is looking at what does the grid look like 5 years from now, 10 years from now? What if it's a cold day? What if it's a hot day? What if there's data centers? What if there's not data centers? What if everyone has an EV? We're running these assessments and studies, and those result in maps and studies so that we can look at the risks of the future. Also, our event analysis and situational awareness is looking at events. Events here in this country, events overseas, events internationally, so that we can learn from these things. Just by show of hands, have you heard of an event called the Iberian Peninsula Blackout? Unfortunately, before then, I didn't know what an Iberian Peninsula was. I'm like, what is an Iberian Peninsula? Like, you mean like Spain and Portugal? I was like, I've heard of Spain and Portugal, but I didn't know of an Iberian Peninsula. We learned from these events. We learned from Ukraine and Russia and the EMS attack. We learned from events in Chile. We learned from events in Cuba, in Puerto Rico, and also from Texas and California. So we learn of these events. We study these events. I'm going to go through these events and show you how these educate and inform our work. So we take all these inputs, going around the circle, risk analysis and prioritization. What are the biggest risks? Tristan said this. We have 100 people. What are the biggest risks? How do we prioritize these things? And different regions have different risks. Yes, we're concerned about wildfires. Probably not as much as California or even our friends in MRO are concerned about wildfires. Yes, we're concerned about hurricanes, even though hurricanes aren't really prevalent here in Ohio, not as much as our friends in NERC are. How do we analyze and prioritize the risks in our region? Then we go into the risk response. What is the collection of all the things we could do? Do we need a new NERC standard? Sometimes the answer is yes. Is it outreach? Is it education? Is it a guideline? Is it a white paper? Is it a NERC alert? Is it partnering with industry? What is all these things we can do? Once we determine the scope of all the things we can do, we deploy those. We call them treatments. So we say, hey, we think natural gas electric interdependence is a challenge to our system. Well, we're not going to make new standards on natural gas. We don't have jurisdiction over that, but we're going to partner with our friends at NASB, or we're going to talk to the gas committees at NERC. What does that deployment and that risk treatment look like? Sometimes it's something like hosting a boot camp, and sometimes it is a new standard. And we're going to get into some examples of that today. And as we do these things, are they working? We monitor and review these things. We collect a lot of data. So we decided to do guidelines and white papers. Are people reading them? Are we moving the needle, or do we need a standard? Do we need something else? And then finally, the information communicating and reporting. Lots of cool reports to check out and read. One really cool report is check out our impact report. We obviously work for the ratepayer, for the individual, for this, the public, for reliability and security. Our impact report communicates back to essentially the general public what we've accomplished in the last year. It has statistics on how many compliance violations Christian processed. It has information on how many events we had. It has information about our workshops, our outreach, our communications, all the different things we did. It's our way of giving back to, hey, this is what we did with your ratepayer money. So this is the NERC risk framework. And for today, I'm going to focus on that risk identification and validation and that risk analysis, because we're going to talk about the events and what we're seeing. So just as a heads up, if you're ever curious about what does NERC and the regions do, there's this book called The NERC Rules of Procedure. It's a great book to read. It's only like 2,000 pages, right, Kristen? Actually, I think I looked it up recently. I think it's 473 pages. But it's all the things that NERC delegates to the regions. Like Michelle said, there's 6 of us regions. It's how we do our audits. And also the sections I have pointed out right here is section 800 is how Johnny does his studies and assessments. These are things we have to do, these engineering studies. It's also how and when and why we analyze events. You see section 807, analysis of major events. And then section 1000 is about our situational awareness. Our situational awareness is really interesting. We have some proprietary tools. So we have some, I don't want to call them secret tools, but we have some tools that we could keep an eye on the grid, what's happening, regarding events on the system. And there's also a lot of really great open source tools that anyone can use. If you don't already have it, download the PGM app, download the MISO app. You can go on real time. You can see what their reserves are. You can see what their interties are. There's really cool stuff. There's a thing called FTNet, GridEye, shows the frequency all day, every day. Even things like social media feeds. You hear about events, you might be scrolling through X and say, oh, there's a blackout in Cuba. We should look into that. So a lot of really great open source tools. Plus, we have some proprietary stuff that gives us insights of what's happening in our footprint. So this is a Brian definition. You won't see this in any NERC literature. So I call it 3 events. I call it the lowercase e events. I call it the capital E events, and I call it capital events, like the stuff that you will read about in the news. This is, like I said, this is the unofficial Brian definition. So lowercase events, just coming from a control room environment at First Energy, things happen all day, every day. Lines trip, whether it's a squirrel, whether it's a relay, whether it's an equipment failure, lightning, a car pole accident, things happen. These are little events. It's like you're playing Jenga, you pull the puzzle piece out, the thing don't fall. You don't want to pull the thing out because it might fall, but little events happen all day, every day. We capture these things. We have all sorts of information. You might hear the word XADs. You're like, what is XADs? It's transmission data, generation data, misoperation data, hundreds and hundreds of events that come to us that we collect data of, how reliable is that 138 kV line? How many times did it trip out last year? Why did it trip out? Was it vegetation related? Was it squirrel? Was it lightning? Was it unknown? Was it relaying? Was it an equipment failure? So these are the little events that happen all the time, all day, every day. Not good, but these things happen. And guess what? For the most part, the lights stay on. A generator trips, the lights stay on. The system is resilient to withstand these lowercase e events. We'll see how resilient it is coming up in the future with all the red that Michelle showed on the map. But right now, we can withstand these lowercase e events. A lot of the data we collect there. So then the capital E events are what we call the reportable events. These are, because of standards, these are events that industry has to report to us. These are, for example, a severe misoperation. By a severe misoperation, a relay opens a breaker. You'll see that in my simulator, and then 2 or 3 other lines trip. And you go, oh, that wasn't intended. Now all of a sudden, instead of just having one Jenga puzzle piece out, I pulled out 2 or 3 pieces. Oh, that was a risky move. Things such as we see vandalism, suspicious behavior. Those are things that are reportable to us. When the EMS and SCADA systems break, those are reportable to us. So if you are in the control room and you're working on your computer and your computer don't work, that's a reportable event. We want your EMS SCADA systems to work. If you remember your history lessons about the 2003 blackout, it wasn't just the trees. It was partially because First Energy, their EMS SCADA systems were not working that day. They're sitting in the control room. They're getting phone calls from AEP and their neighbors saying, hey, frequency's going down. We're seeing some stuff on the system. And they're looking at their screens and they say, looks okay to me. They had stale data. It wasn't refreshing. They didn't see the things that were happening. So when these computer systems aren't working, that is a reportable event. They report those things to us. We look into the root causes, just like how Kristen does with the violations. We look at the root causes. We look at why this happened. We write lessons learned. We share that with industry. This is an important part of what we do to make the grid more reliable. Then, oh, I don't like these. These are the capital E, capital V, capital T. These are the things you see on the news. If you remember last year, there was an outage in Baltimore. Impacted about 4,000 people for about 28 minutes. So these are not necessarily like the distribution events. The storms come through, knock out some distribution wires. That is not really our jurisdiction. It's not that we're not concerned. We don't like this, but we're looking at the big grid events. So in Baltimore, what happened was they lost an entire substation. We have a report on our website. All of a sudden, N-1 times 5 from a cascading event. All of a sudden now we're shedding load in emergency operations. These are things that make the news. Winter Storm Uri, where they had rolling blackouts in Texas. It's kind of like if you think of this triangle, there's probably a medium amount of events with a capital E and hopefully very, very small, big events. Once again, if you could reduce the number of little events, hopefully you reduce the number of big events. And as we see our margins getting thinner and thinner, these things become more and more concerning. If you're interested in this kind of stuff, you go data. And I go, me too. I love that kind of stuff. Awesome. Check out our State of Reliability Report. NERC releases this report every year. It's called the State of Reliability Report. It has every statistic you could possibly imagine. So if you say, well, what are the trends, TADS, GADS, MIDAS, all these numbers, all these lowercase e events, are things going up or down? How many loss of load events did we have? How many EEAs did we have? All these types of things. The State of Reliability Report is a wonderful report. It has all the statistics of how we're doing. It has it by interconnect. Here's how it's going in the Western interconnect, the Eastern interconnect in our region. Also, like I said, our impact report has specifically to the RF region, how many violations did Kristen have to process? How many late nights did she have with those 500 violations? 85% of them being self-reported, right, Kristen? Yes. How many events did we have in ReliabilityFirst last year? We had 62 events. 62, those were 62 reportable events. They could range everything from, someone broke into a substation and stole copper, which happens. That actually mess up relaying. That's a reliability concern, along with, we don't like people stealing our copper. Also the severe misoperations, the EMS SCADA events, all those things we talked about today. So if you want to dig into the numbers and data, it's all there. These are things that we share with you at aggregate. So here's some of the big capital E, capital B, what I'm saying, the big events. And what do we learn from them. Not just, oh, it keeps us in business. We write these wonderful reports. No, yes, we do write wonderful reports, but it's really the actions taken from these reports that really helps drive the needle. So the bottom left, that's the 2003 blackout report written by FERC and the DOE and others. Tree trimming, big deal. EMS SCADA outage is a big deal. Zone 3 relaying, mandatory standards, all the things we know and love today. We did all right for a little bit. We call it the golden era of reliability, maybe. 2011, then the Southwest outage reinforced the need for day-ahead studies. This was like my main job back at First Energy, was running day-ahead studies of, dear Brian, based on what we know, how do we think the grid's going to do tomorrow? Based on what lines I have out, maybe for maintenance, maybe they're planned outages, what generation do I have available, based on what I think the weather's going to be, what the load's going to be, based on everything I know, how do I think the grid is going to perform tomorrow? Do I see any challenges? And if I see challenges, let's solve it today so that I'm not trying to solve it on the fly tomorrow. We saw a lack of day-ahead studies in that report that led to some real-time issues that were pretty much preventable. Let's go back to the polar vortex. Oh, no, I'm sorry. Bottom left, I couldn't see. My font was too small. The Metcalf attack. Who's ever heard of the Metcalf attack? A couple people. So Metcalf was a substation in California that was essentially like shot up by like people with like machine guns, right? Really made us change the way we think about physical security. If you haven't noticed, most of our stuff is out in the open. Yes, the control rooms are like protected and the generators are protected. And yes, the substations have some chain link fences around them. But it made us think differently about physical security, considering like we could just look outside and see all the wires and substations that are out in the open. So the Metcalf substation was shot up. It led to a new standard called SIP 14 regarding how we protect critical infrastructure. So we can't affordably build a fortress around every single substation, even though that would be great. So first and foremost, let's identify the most critical substations. Number two, let's not tell people what those are because that would be bad. Number three, then let's build a fortress around them so that those can't be shot up and compromised. Polar vortex. We roll into the polar vortex, sub-freezing temperatures. We're on the verge of reliability. Like we're at the end of our reserve margins and limits. A lot of generators didn't show up for the work that day, and we go, well, why not? A system that was highly dependent on natural gas, freezing wellheads, freezing issues, the deliverability of natural gas, generators that were freezing themselves at the unit. So we saw, 40,000 megawatts of forced outages that day. That's like 40 nuclear power plants not showing up for work. And guess what? We hung on, but barely. We don't like that. We hung on, but barely. What did we learn from that? Well, we need to ramp up our winterization efforts. So it wasn't until years later that we had a winterization standard that now we enforce today that, there are certain things generators have to do to be winterized. But ReliabilityFirst wasn't going to wait around for the standard to come along. We started what was called our voluntary winterization visit program, where we'd actually send our experts out to power plants to go through their winter checklist and their winterization. Do they have O'Brien back boxes? Do they have heat tracing? And we've done that program every year since 2014. In fact, last year we set a world record, or at least I'm going to say it's a world record. We visited 30 different power plants to check on their winterization. And that was outside of compliance and standards. That's just working with them. They're happy at this point to show off what they're doing. Do they have heat barriers? Do they have, what are they doing? Here's where they stage their salt, and here's how they do all the different things they're doing. Really cool program because we can't, especially in the near future, can't afford 40,000 megawatts of forced outages. We survived that day, but in the future, our margins are just not that big anymore. Then we started learning from California and Texas regarding these IBRs. So California and Texas, obviously leaders in renewable generation of solar and wind. And then there was an event in 2016, it was called the Blue Cut Fire, and there were some wildfires, and there were some disturbances on the system, and all the solar panels went offline. And they said, well, we didn't trip, we just ceased to inject. We just didn't want to put the megawatts onto the grid that day. We go, well, why not? And you get into some technical stuff about the grid forming versus the grid following. But we realized, well, we can't just have a line trip and then all the solar just decides it doesn't want to show up for work that day. We need to mitigate this, especially as we're going to add more solar and more inverter-based resources to the system. So there was a firmware update. We thought we fixed it, but then we found out in Odessa in Texas, oh, well, maybe we didn't fix it as well as we should have. Now we have techy things like the ride through, and can these IBRs ride through events? Very similar to 2003 of can the generators ride through events? So when something happens on the system, yes, we need to protect the equipment. We don't want equipment to fail, but you have to give the operators a fighting chance. An event happens on the system, the generators need to ride through that event to give the operators a fighting chance so we don't cascade into a blackout. So we talk about things like ride through currents and protection and controls, all these things. So as we add more inverter-based resources, they will not lead to further disturbances. Winter Storm Uri at bottom right, that was kind of the last straw for the winterization standards. So, we've always been talking about winterization standards. After Winter Storm Uri and after a couple hundred people died, we are now having mandatory enforceable reliability standards on winterization. If you don't winterize your units, there will be fines and penalties, something that's very, very serious. We've always been doing that outreach since 2014, but now we have mandatory standards as well. Diane, one of her first testimonies was on Winter Storm Elliott. Winter Storm Elliott, wasn't a very great performance by our generating fleet as well. Once again, reinforced that these units need to be reliable during these extreme conditions. I mean, life and health depend on it. And then finally, the events we're looking at recently are these data center events in Virginia. If you've heard of Loudoun County Data Center Alley, we're starting to learn very quickly how data centers respond and react on the system. I'm not going to opine too much on data centers. They're an asset. And just like the IBRs, our role is to make sure that when they're plugged in, they don't cause blackouts. So the recent one was, we thought it was 3 gigawatts, but about 4 gigawatts of power came off the system. So you're the operator, you're sitting on the desk, and all of a sudden, you're trying to supply that load and demand all day, every day, like they do on the desk. You say, I lost 4 gigawatts of load. Where did it go? Did 4 gigawatts of people just turn off their lights? Well, no, it's the data centers all flipped to their backup generators based on a disturbance on the system. All of a sudden now you're over generating. You got to ramp down generation. It took about 10 minutes to do so. Okay, well, we survived. Great. The bar's not, we survived. The bar is thriving. Lights stayed on. Well, what if it was 5 gigawatts or 6 gigawatts? Or what if it was the data centers in Columbus or the ones in Texas? So we are learning from these things. They are going to lead to new mandatory reliability standards. That's how we take this event information, and here's how we apply it into our work. Does that make sense? Yes. People are nodding. It's good. Security events as well. We don't get too much into cyber and physical security today, but we could do a whole workshop on cyber and physical security. I already mentioned Stuxnet, operational stuff and the Ukraine grid attack, but not PETA. This was a supply chain thing. We were already toilet paper on the shelf. Our supply chain standard is like, what is the software in our stuff, or where are we getting our stuff from, and is it safe, and is it going to cause a security incident on the grid? Who are our vendors? Are our vendors vetted? All of those types of things. So are we getting things from countries that don't necessarily like us? And how do we know it doesn't have sensors in it and different things that we don't like? So that leads to supply chain standards. If you're familiar with the NERC standards, we would call that SIP 13. Solar winds. You guys remember this one? It wasn't that long ago. Solar winds, we started figuring out they are in our systems. And we go, like in my system? Like, I hope not. But they're in our systems. So now that leads to a new standard. It's called SIP 15. It's called Internal Network Security Monitoring. Now there has to be a standard and guidelines of how do we monitor what's in our system? What's our baseline? Did our baseline change? Is something in our system that we don't know and we don't like? And how do we get it out of there? And then also from these security events, we learned from other infrastructures as well. Colonial Pipeline ransomware. This was May 7th, 2021. It was a ransomware attack. And they didn't even attack the operational system. They attacked the IT system. But out of an abundance of caution, they shut down all the operational stuff because they didn't know what was, how deep this ransomware attack went. So it shut down, they said, like 5,500 miles of pipeline. Once again, the lights stayed on, but these are things that are concerning. These are precursors. These are things that it is important that we learn from and that we do things on. So the gas pipeline stuff, it's really interesting. A lot of the gas pipeline stuff, there's TSA guidelines, but they're not under like the NERC SIP standards like the electric grid is. So, when we talk to the gas and the oil industry, we say, hey, apply these as you may to your stuff regarding supply chain, internal network security monitoring, patching, all the things we do to keep our grid safe from a security perspective. So once again, what do we do about all this? Our response is compliance and coordination. It's not one, it's not the other. As our CEO, Tim Gallagher, said, we're not going to solve all of our problems with compliance and standards, but we will solve some of them. These are very, very important standards. So sometimes it's new standards, sometimes it's revised standards, sometimes it's new registration, sometimes it's NERC alerts, new winterization standards, new ride-through settings, physical security with SIP 14, virtualization, cloud supply chain. These are all new or being revised standards. We're working on a cloud standard. Lou Folkerts from Michelle's team is working on a standard drafting team on that. As Diane mentioned, one of NERC's priorities. All right, so the events lead to new standards, new registrations. Diane and Michelle talked about this. We're registering new IBRs. We realized through Odessa and the Blue Cut fire that the smaller solar and wind that didn't normally meet the NERC registry probably need to be registered. Same thing with the data centers. Data centers were not registered entities. They have a material impact to the grid. They can and should be registered. If you're ever interested in who is registered, like who has to comply with the NERC standards in the RF region, just Google or AI NERC registry and look it up. There's an Excel and you can sort by RF and you can see who are the transmission owners, who are the distribution providers, who are the generator owners. You can see the list of all the companies that need to comply with standards in our region or in Will Seifert region or in Faisal's region. So you would see, like, if you were going to the NERC registry, you would say, show me the reliability coordinators in RF. It would come up with PGM and MISO, obviously. If you were looking at, what are the co-ops and munis, you would see things like Cuyahoga Falls or City of Lansing, Cleveland Public Power, stuff like that. So once again, we're not going to solve all the issues with new compliance and standards, or at least, sometimes they take a minute to, get up and running and for our entities to comply with them. So there's a lot of things we do. We don't just sit around and wait for the standards. We do guidelines, white papers, newsletters, bulletins. Like I said, our world famous cold weather winterization visits, where we visit the plants and visit with the generator owners and talk to them. We do industry assist visits. This is kind of like the insurance companies realized maybe like 10 years ago, which was like, what's better than paying out all these claims is that people just drove safe and didn't crash their cars. We realized, like, as much as like we like to keep Kristen busy with these violations, like, what if like the entities just complied with the standards? So we have assist visits. Any entity can reach out to my department, which is actually the Mike Hughes department, and say, I would like an assist visit. I need help with FAT Gate or PRC5, winterization, tree trimming, cybersecurity. I have a question on the standard. So the assist visits is something we've been doing for 12 years regarding helping out industry. And the other thing we do too is we do tabletops. We do little tabletops and we also do big tabletops. I'll call them capital T tabletops. It's where we visit a state, usually in their capital, and we say, all right, we practice this with industry. Tabletops are nothing new to our industry, but do we practice this with the others? And by the others, I mean policymakers, the FBI, local law enforcement, medical, natural gas, communications. We bring everyone into the room. So we did it in Ohio a couple of years ago. We went down to Columbus. We partnered with the Emergency Management Agency, the EMA. They told us, hey, here's all the people you need to invite. We invited someone from the medical system. We had people from Verizon. That's at the same time they were dealing with that train wreck in Palestine right at the border. But we said, all right, if there was an event, and we simulated an event. So we said, in Ohio, we said, well, what if there was an EMP attack over the Columbus airport? How many people would be impacted and for how long? All hopefully hypothetical type things. How do we coordinate that response? We all have emergency plans, but are they well coordinated? Do we know our neighbors? And we learn things like, oh, I have a satellite phone. I'll just call you on the satellite phone, except I don't have your satellite phone number. Things like that are the lessons learned from these types of events. We went out to New Jersey. We said, well, what if there's an attack during the World Cup? We did that a couple of years ago. And they said, yes, we are ready if, substations were attacked during the World Cup. And what would that mean? We went out to Maryland and we said, well, what would happen if they had a superstorm Sandy and bad weather came across the entire footprint, knocking out tons of lines and generators? How would we coordinate that response? These things are really, really important to practice in advance. It's even simple things like knowing the names and the contacts before these bad things happen. Even like we were talking to policymakers and they were kind of asking questions of like, oh, where are the cooling shelters in my district? You know, if it's a hot summer day and no one has AC, like, do they go to the library? Does the library have a backup generator? Things like that are just really important things to think about and communicate. So yeah, we do tabletops. If you're interested in one, please talk to me later, and we could coordinate with your emergency management office and your state energy office. It's something that we really like to do. We do workshops, webinars. We have a monthly webinar called Tech Talk with RF, highly recommended. Our fall summit is in Columbus, September 14th through 16th with industry. You know, we'll have a couple hundred people in person, and then we'll have hopefully a couple hundred people on the WebEx as well. And as Diane talked about, are also world famous. Everything we do is world famous. State outreach program. We're on the record in most of our states with hearings, testimonies, written remarks, one-on-one meetings. We can talk to the Ohio Democratic Caucus. You know, and plus we also talk to, I'll call it state outreach adjacent, literally anyone and everyone that has a role in electric grid reliability. So in fact, you know, we're actually going out to the Maryland Clean Energy Center. They have a summit. We're there to talk about reliability. We're going out. I've talked at different co-ops and munis. So we've talked with the Ohio Chamber of Commerce. So it's amazing, you know, obviously without saying, electricity touches everything we do. It touches our economy. It touches our health and human services. So you know, like Diane said, we don't ever want someone to say, I wish someone would have told me. Diane also loves that picture. It's the second time we used that picture today. It's a great picture. Here's the bad news, though. We are entering high-risk times. Like I said, I wasn't very fun at dinner parties until recently. We're entering high-risk times. We're starting to see precursors. These are like the, you're having like these like little mini like heart problems before the stroke, you know, like these are things that we're very, very concerned about. Michelle showed the map. The map is not a prediction. I sure hope it's not a prediction. I don't want to go back to caveman times. I'm not much of a hunter-gatherer. I'm much more of like an email type person. We're looking at things like energy emergency alerts in hours by region. And top left is PGM. You could pull these numbers yourself. They have a dashboard that shows when they're in these energy emergency alerts. We're seeing more and more hours in these energy emergency alerts. These are like, my dumb analogy is like, I take my kids to the Grand Canyon and I go, this is beautiful. You should see this. You should also stay away from the edge. Let's stay away from the edge. How many hours did we spend on the edge? Hopefully no hours, hopefully very few hours on the edge. We don't like to live on the edge. We would like to see those numbers go down, not up. In the state of reliability report, they have this map. It's called the $1 billion weather and climate disasters. We are seeing more extreme weather across the Midwest and Mid-Atlantic, the wildfires, the extreme cold, the -20. They said there's an El Nino coming. I feel like it's an SNL skit or something, but no, these things are very serious. And these things cause a lot of damage on our grid. Our grid is mostly outside. I mean, natural gas industry, a lot of their stuff is buried. A lot of our stuff is out in the open on poles and towers, is susceptible to weather. We had the Baltimore event. We had a report on that. I could do a whole presentation on that. The interconnected gas and electric systems, we are highly dependent on natural gas. If you talk to the natural gas people, they'll tell you things like, hey, we haven't built storage in years. If we're going to have more and more things connected to natural gas, we're going to need more and more storage. Every winter, we dip into our storage, and every year we get a little bit lower. You know, are we going to need more storage? How does this work, and who pays for all these things? These are challenges we have, let alone the natural gas security. And then one of the interesting reports, this one right here, load pocket shoulder season challenges. Back in the day when Mr. Johnny Guest and I used to work at First Energy, it was like, if you could survive the hottest day or the coldest day, then the rest of the year was not easy, but not too bad. We're starting to see like events in April and May, and that's when usually the loads are down. People aren't running their AC. It's not too hot, at least not here in the Midwest and Mid-Atlantic. And we're starting to see events across the region, and we call them these shoulder seasons. And that's another precursor of like, hey, our margins are getting thinner and thinner and thinner. It used to just be like, hey, if I could survive that 95-degree day, I could survive anything. Now we're like barely surviving some April and May events and October events, and we go, uh-oh, that's not good. So high-risk times, our work has never been more important, and most importantly, our collaboration with industry and policymakers has never been more important. So enough of me talking. We're going to have some fun. Listening to me talk is not fun, but we're going to go into the control room, metaphorically, of course, and we're going to do, it's called an OpTech simulator. So give me 1 second. Let me pull. So We are in the control room. This is a very, very small mini grid. This is not the Eastern Interconnect by any means. But we are going to go into a control room and we're going to see, well, how does this work if you are the operator on the desk? So first, if you've seen this before, I apologize. Maybe you've seen it early lunch before you're in for a treat. Let's just do some orientation about what are we even looking at, because we didn't go through the month of training in the PGM training and NERC certification training. We are all now operators on the fly. So the Eastern Balancing Authority, that is our grid is connected to the rest of the world. So the grids obviously are interconnected. So if I am not balancing, the rest of the world will help me balance. So that's good. I'm connected to the rest of the world, except for the purposes of today's drill, I want to balance. You know, emergency power from them, nor do I want to be sending down power. Today, I don't have a contract with them. They're good for reliability, but probably not the most affordable thing to do. All right. The spinning wishbones, what are these? These are three-phase generators. This is making power. For today's purposes, we're going to try to keep this as simple as possible. I can give a whole lecture on megabars and voltage and why that's important. We could go back to engineering school, but we'll try to keep this as simple as possible. It's making 190 megawatts of, I'll call, real power that is being consumed by the load. I apologize to the people on the line because I keep walking around, so you won't see my face, but that's fine. The real power is being used here. These little arrows here are the load. So right now we're using 150 plus 50 with 150 plus 50. 200, yes. We're using 200 megawatts of power. 190 is coming from this generator. 10 megawatts are coming from this generator. Let's have some fun. This generator could be anything you want it to be. If you are, let's generator in Maryland is a hydro plant, or maybe for Representative Radar, you can say, hey, that's an SMR. Maybe today it's an SMR. But whatever it is, today it costs us $27 a megawatt hour, which is the cheapest piece on the board. We're actually going to play a game later, energy choices, and we try to like balance the system and also not try to break the bank. Stuff that PGM and MISO do every day through their market mechanisms regarding they call it an affordable dispatch. So this is the cheapest piece on the board, $27 a megawatt hour. It's making 190 megawatts. Let's see, this one is natural gas. It can be anything, but let's say it's natural gas. It's at 10 megawatts. 200 megawatts that go here and here. I have 3 transmission lines. We'll just call them 1, 2, and 3 from top to bottom, pushing the power from, we'll call it from east to west. What are those little blue donuts? Those are not the donuts you had for breakfast. Facility ratings. So this tells you how much power I could push through the line. Right now, you see the blue is at about, what is it, about 45% or so. So that line is good for 175 MVA. I got about 76 megawatts going through it right now. It's about, oh, look, right there, 45% loaded. So good. I don't want to overload my lines. I don't want my lines to sag into a tree. I don't want my lines to burn out. It's about 45% of its rating. Kristen knows all about ratings because the entities need to have facility ratings and need to be accurate and need to be communicated. So if you're First Energy, you're telling PGM, hey, my line is good for X amount of megawatts or whatever. And then you get some really cool stuff like dynamic line ratings, interested ratings, but I'm going to keep it simple for today. So for today, it's about, this line is about 45% loaded. Make sense? Still follow me? Power is going from right to left. You see the 190, 76, 76, 38 going from right to left to serve this load. As we begin today, this load right here represents like my city. It's early in the morning. People aren't using a lot of power. Maybe just some lights are on. Maybe someone's charging their Tesla. But throughout the day, this number is going to go up, 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 up. People are going to wake up. They're going to turn coffee machines. They're going to turn on Netflix. They're going to turn on their hair dryers and all the things they need. And that number is going to go up, up, up through the day. Maybe run their AC. And then at the end of the day, then it comes back down. But pretty typical load pattern throughout the day. This one's a little bit funner. This one's going to be 50 megawatts. It's going to stay at 50 megawatts all day. I'm going to call this a data center, not to trigger anyone. This is a data center. Now, this is what I would call the old, like the old-fashioned data center. This is mostly cloud computing. every day. The newer data centers that we're seeing with the AI learning and the AI inference, oh man, that's a whole nother challenge. That will bounce up and down, RAM super fast to go low. These are things that we are studying on the system. We're looking at all the techie stuff like the oscillations and the ride through and the disturbance monitoring, all those things. These old-fashioned ones, my mom's like, pictures on her iPad. It's going to be at 50 megawatts all day, every day. If it was one of these new modern ones, it could go up and down. Hey, it's doing AI learning. It ramps up to 300, then it ramps back down to 200. Things that the operators are not necessarily used to operating. Usually our loads are pretty predictable for at least for the last 100 years or so. These data center loads can be a little bit more unpredictable. Not too much different. Used to come on and off, especially maybe the Republic CEO go. Now we're seeing simple. It's going to be day to day. This number is going to go up today. So I'm going to get too much into the gap. We can do a whole lesson on that. And then, what are these two delicious donuts at the bottom? These two delicious donuts at the bottom are my contingencies, my N-1. And the computer is saying, hey, listen, Brian, that's about 45% loaded. If you lost a line, it would jump up to 75%. I go, oh, cool, so good. I lost a line. So pretty close, right? I'm going to use another line. Right, overloaded. Oh. So that's my all every squares. These are circuit breakers. That's how you direct the traffic. When I click on them, we call it SCADA. Are ready to work. Yeah, that means through it. You're like, oh, it's a little bit. Be safety on your gun. Like, oh, that red is energized, dangerous, don't touch it, hot, those types of things. So the red circuit breakers are closed. The breaker's closed, as in the power's going through it. If I open it up, it's green. It means it's green, safe to touch, but it means there's no power flowing through it. Okay, so follow me. So as I operate the system, I want my ACE to be 0. That's my area control error. That's the 90 and the 10 plus generations 200, loads 200. I'm balancing. I'm not buying emergency. Right? I want to, within reason, use the cheaper generator. It goes up to 250. It's called a dispatchable resource. I can ramp it up. I can ramp it down. It's a dispatchable resource, like natural gas, like hydro, like an SMR. These are things that can move up and down, like coal. Now, if it's a nuclear plant, like Perry or Davis-Besse, it would be at the same number all day, every day. Perry don't ramp up and down today. And it's 1,000 megawatts all day, every day, except when it's coming off the line. A new SMR in the future can go back and forth. It's more dispatchable. Solar and wind come as the forecast goes. We actually have a simulator that shows that has solar and wind built in, where you see as the day goes on, the solar goes up, and then when that comes, solar down, and then we have how you would charge at night or in another time when you need it. Same thing with the wind. Do you want to use that in a second? All right. Usually, if people can't hear me, they don't complain. So I guess people online are complaining. Shut. All right, I'm back. I feel like movie star with the microphone, like karaoke night or something. All right, so with operating, rule number 1, no blackouts, right? Everyone gets powered in. Rule number 2, no one dies. No one gets electrocuted, right? I mean, rule 1 and 2 are pretty much go together. No one dies, lights down. Rule number 3, let's keep my ace close to 0, plus or minus 10. Rule number 4, let's try to use the cheaper power and let's not try to bankrupt the ratepayer. Yes? Okay. So we're going to start the simulation and we're going to see how this transpires on this day. Okay. So those are the kind of things we're looking to do. This is something that if you want me to bring back to your energy committee, we can let you draw, we can let you play, and we can set contests. In fact, at the end of the day, it will give me a score of how good an operator I am or how bad of an operator I am. I'm glad I lose, but if I survive the day, it will actually give me a score. And then operators use this to kind of test their mettle. All sorts of different simulations, ones with more lines, more scenario renewables. But this one is relatively simple, but then you're going to see really get it up. Awesome. Very helpful on that. So, all right, we have the desk. I think it's going to be a nice day. It looks nice outside. It's going to be an easy day. Just control that ace. If you look at the time at the top right-hand corner, it's 6:05. That time goes pretty fast. You know, if we did a real simulation, you'd be here for 12 hours from 6 to 6. Nobody wants that. So the time is going pretty fast. It's 6:08, 6:09. I wonder when people are going to start waking up and turning on their coffee machines. I have a feeling, you know, Anne usually wakes up before 5 a.m. But today she kind of slept in at 6:15. She wakes up and she turned on her coffee machine. Oh my God, Diane, look, it went up from 150 to 162. So my ace is negative. Okay, easy peasy. I have a dispatchable generator. I'm going to ramp it up. I want to keep that ace plus or minus 10. You see, I'm over generating by about 3 megawatts. I have 215. I need 212. The extra 3 get absorbed by, call it the rest of the world. Keep that ace plus or minus 10. I'm in pretty good shape. So at 6:30, more people wake up. You know, it's kind of like me. I like to sleep in a little bit. Usually I'm up by 6:30. All right. Looks like it's going to be kind of boring. You're just going to click that up arrow. Yeah, you're right. Just click this up arrow. We'll see what happens. But you know what? Like, this isn't my first day on the desk. And like, I'm kind of like thinking like, got a bad feeling about the day. And in fact, I have such a bad feeling that at 7 o'clock, something very bad's going to happen. I just don't know why. I could feel it in my bones. I could feel it like, I'm just so nervous. I'm telling my boss, I go, I just have a bad feeling about the day. My boss says, Brian, it's fine. It's fine. All right. So 240. Loads 237. Everything's going okay so far. I'm using this nice cheap generator. Hey, if I lose a line, I'll go to 91%. That's okay. I'm fine there. My line's at about what? 53%. Okay, that's good. If I lose one, I go to 91%. All right, I'm doing all right. 657. What happens at 7? Oh my God. Oh my God. All right, I'm pausing it. All right. What happened? I lost the line. Look, the screen is open. Why did I lose the line? Well, the operator doesn't know. All they hear is this noise in the control room. They go, uh-oh. They look up, they go, what happened? They get an alarm. I lost that number 1 line. I don't know. I mean, looks nice outside. You know, it could be lightning in the area, I guess. Was it a squirrel? Was it a equipment failure? I don't know. In fact, I will have to send out, you know, Michelle to go check on it. And Michelle, and I did pause it, just like, you know, I paused it. Michelle went out to the substation. I go, Michelle, what happened? She goes, oh, Brian, it's nothing. I'll have it fixed in 45 minutes. Michelle, that is awesome. Usually, in my experience on the desk, it wasn't fixed in 45 minutes. But Michelle's like really good at her job. So she's going to get this fixed in 45 minutes. But for 45 minutes, I have a headache. And here's my headache. Line number 2 is at 91%. Good, right? No worries. Line number 3 is at 50%. That's good. My ace is at negative 10. Okay, fine. I can ramp that up. Okay, my ace is at 0. That's good. But my contingency is saying, hey, Brian, listen, if you lose another line, the other line is going to be at 160%, which means then that might come out of service. Then you might have a blackout. So that would be very, very bad. So I can't live with that because, well, what are the chances I lose another line? Well, I don't know. Why did I lose the first line? If these 2 lines are near each other and it's squirrels, maybe there's this squirrel parade. I don't know. Maybe those lines are near each other and there's lightning in that area. I don't know. Maybe we're under attack from someone who doesn't like us or doesn't like me. So I don't know. I can't risk it. not even for 45 minutes. I can't risk it. I got to do something. So I got to get that 160 to less than 100. You guys have any thoughts of how I would do that? I mean, I could just shed the data center. Some people might like that. But outside of shedding load, what do you think I should do? Oh, Joan knows what to do. So this generator, remember I said I was going to try to use the cheapest generator? Well, reliability comes first. It's literally our name. So this generator right here, I'm going to ramp this up. I need to make 250, right? So why don't I just make, a whole bunch more over here? A whole bunch of clicks. What if I made 150 over here? Like I'm making power. It's kind of fun. And what if I ramp this one down? So yeah, I want to use a cheaper generator, of course. But if I use the more expensive one, $45, look, now this one's at 40%. If I lose a line, this only goes to 66%. I like that. Now, granted, it's a math game. I could do more here. I could go to 150. I could ramp this one down. I could balance this out. I want to have a portable dispatch for everybody. So yeah, that's about 100. So I got to be a little bit higher here. So I'll go to 110, a little balancing act here. 140, 110. My ace is at 0. My good. My contingencies are good. Help me get through there. So, fire alarm. All right. I'm gonna pause it. Tell hard at work. She said she's gonna give me this line back by 7:45. Hopefully in the meeting. My ace is -12. Let me ramp up over here. Things are looking okay. Got 3 lines. One of them's out of service. I'm checking to see if I lose another line. 723. That's not going to stop people from using their coffee machines and turning on computers. Like they're not. I mean, they didn't see the lights go out. There's no outages. They have no idea that I'm in the control room sweating. I was looking for my second breakfast and I got to wait a little bit to do these things. So, all right, we're at 275 generation, 275 load. Ace is 0. It's 733. Michelle's working really hard. Get this line back. Hopefully, this is the only thing that happens today. And then hopefully I could go back to monitoring the system, dispatching generation, and have a good day. But I just don't know. I just feel like it's going to be one of those days. I don't know what you guys think. 745, -12, ramp up this generator. Okay, so doing okay, 150, 140, 290, 287, doing okay. My spinning reserves are good. I'm going to talk about spinning reserves in just a minute, but oh, it's available. Michelle's done. Michelle goes, Brian, you could have the line back. Good. I got the line back. Cool. I could actually start using this cheap generator again. So let me ramp up this cheap generator. I can ramp this one down a little bit. Let's go up to like 200. I can ramp this one down to 100. Hey, we're doing pretty good. These lines are at 47%. If I lose a line, I'm at 80%. The system is reliable. It probably could squeeze a couple extra megawatts out of this one on the right, but just want to kind of play it safe today. It's already been a rough morning. 812. It's only going to get hotter throughout the day, so this load's going to go up. Remember, I said at 150 now we're over here. So you ramp this up a little bit. All right, so my contingency is 85. My line right here is at 50%. Doing okay. Maybe today won't be so bad after all. What do you think, Diane?
Oh, I think it's really bad.
Diane worked in the control room too. She knows a bad day when she sees them. She knows. There will be signs. All right, so my contingency is 90%. I'm monitoring the system. I'm going to put on these cap banks a little bit more. I can do a whole lesson on voltage, but not today. You just don't have enough time. You have to come back next year. Diane, I think at 9 o'clock, something bad's going to happen. Just think. All right, 8:42. I better get that hot pocket in quick before something bad happens at 9. See that 3? So the generator on the bottom left, that goes up to 250. My one on the right goes up to 250. This one I haven't even used here. This one's expensive. That one goes up to 250 as well. 855. I can feel it in my bones. Yeah. Oh no. What did I lose? What did I lose? The generator. This $250 a megawatt hour. That ain't good. Oh, that's, I mean, right now, reliability is fine. These lines aren't overloaded, 94%. But, oh, wait, 50 megawatt. I better turn this generator on. I better start ramping up. Now, that one. I'm going to ramp this one up as high as I could go. I'm going to go up to 250. Don't go much higher than that. Let's start ramping this one up because my is still negative 90. Oh, boy. Better click faster. I'm going to get that score because I'm click faster. Oh, boy. Okay, here we go. Expect this. Ooh, I didn't. It's a little peaker today. A little expensive, $60, but here I am. Hey, this unit's out to 10. Michelle is so good at fixing things. I mean, usually these units trip out. Maybe it's a tube leak. It might be out for like 4 hours, or it could be out for 2 days. But Michelle goes, Brian, I got you. It's remarkable. I mean, if you're on the desk, I mean, if Thiry or Davis Bessie tripped out a nuclear power plant, that thing could be off for 2 weeks. It could be a tube leak. It could be something. Maybe they could. Michelle says she's going to get the factory, so I could go back to using some shear generation. You know what's funny though is that when that unit's off, I'm actually making power by the load. All the power is like right by the load, so these lines don't have a lot of flow on. All the power is like very close to the load. That's actually kind of good reliability. Having a generation near the source. Yes, transmission is good to move power, but also we don't have a lot near the source. So, all right, so got the unit back online. Once again, I got to rebalance the system. I can ramp this one up. Let's do that. Let's try to do it the easy way. So clicking the top. I just fire this up to 200 megawatts. Okay, now 5. So we are back in business. We're using the cheap generator at, oh, it actually went up on me. These market people, $29 now. The one on the bottom left, 45. I turned off the expensive one. So I'm back in business. But let me talk a little bit for a second about spinning reserves. Spinning reserves are very, very important to system operators. These are essentially your online headroom on your operator. So this generator is at 200. What does it go up to? You guys remember? 250, thank you. So how much headroom does it have? 50, yes. 250 minus 250. This one also goes up to 250. It's at 210. So I got 40 of headroom there. So right now I have 90 megawatts of spinning reserve. That's 90 megawatts of headroom. These are really important things as system events happen, as generators trip offline. They have something up and running with some headroom. If these things were popped off, they wouldn't have any. Watch this. If I bring on this one, and let me just make this one the minimum. Give me a second here. I'm gonna get a bad score. I'm not clicking fast enough. Let me go to 10. If that's at 10, I just added 240 of headroom. So now my spinning reserves are high. In the PJM world, they want to keep spinning reserves at 1.5 times their single largest contingency. So in this simulation, I think scoring system wants me to keep my reserves at, I think, like 100. Oh, what happened now? Uh-oh, I lost that natural gas generator. So I have to start ramping, Let's try to do this the easy way. I'm under generating by 185. $54.50, my AC at 0. Not have a lot of room. I got 50 on my generator here at Atlanta. I have no headroom on my generator here at Memphis. Luckily, Michelle's on the case again. She says she could get this back to me by noon. But imagine if it was going to be out for 3 or 4 days. I'm in a very, very bad situation of I got very reserves. And at this point, other than just going negative on my ACE, there's no way to get more reserve. There's no other generators I can bring on. One trick I could do is I could shed load. I could say, hey, goodbye, data center, you're out. Then hence I'm over generating. I can ramp this down and I can get my reserves up. I mean, that's what we call a rolling blackout or load shed, or maybe in some instances, the data center has backup generation it can flip to. So that's a way I could get my reserves up. But if I leave that on and I have to have this up at 250, I am really, really running out of reserves here, spinning reserves. So, I mean, I'm at a very, very bad situation where if I lost another unit, I'm talking about rolling blackouts. I'm talking about, very, very bad day, capital E, capital V, ENTS events. So you kind of see how like the system started off okay, but it don't take much. And we don't even know why this unit failed. Was this a cyber attack, a physical attack? Was this bad weather? All the things that could cause this unit to fail, a tube leak. Maybe this couldn't get natural gas delivered that day for whatever reason. Going to unpause it. So my reserves are very, very low. If I want more reserves, I could shed load or I could lean more on the Eastern Balancing Authority. But that unit's not coming back till noon. What time is lunch at? 11:30? Okay, so we're right at 11:30, so I'm going to wrap this up in just a second. So essentially, you could play out this OPSEC scenario all the way to 6 p.m. The load will go up. You've already gone up 150 to 437. I think by the end of the day, it's at like. But you see as things happen, how the operators respond and react. So that's why as we integrate data centers, IVRs, generators, we get all these risks. I think someone, either Diane or Michelle, said at the beginning, it's really like that combination of all these risks together, how it plays out in real life. So we talk about, like, I'm looking at all these tools and my dispatching and my ACE. What if my EMS was working that day? What if I didn't know I was blind and I couldn't respond and react to these problems? You can see how these risks could really, really compound and cause reliability challenges on the system. So the OPSEC simulator is a lot of fun. If you ever want to try it out, let me know. I could let you play. We can see what your score is. We can see if you can beat my high score. But at least I hope this shows you a couple of things about what is a dispatchable resource. And then just some of the challenges we have. Like, so for example, like suppose we said, hey, that oil peaker in the top left corner, we want to retire that. We have a renewable mandate and we want to replace that with solar, wind, and battery. Well, how does that work in an operating environment? Or suppose we want to add an SMR, or suppose we want to have a nuclear power plant that runs at that same megawatt threshold all day, every day, it doesn't go up or down. All these things have to work in tandem for us to keep the lights on. So the operation simulation really brings these things to light. Imagine 50 megawatt. Imagine if that was AI learning and it bounced from 50 to 100 to 250 back down to 0. How challenging that would be. And then even like when that line tripped. Imagine if at that line trip, the data center flipped to backup generation and how confused I would be, and all the things I'd have to do to respond and react. And I have to know, well, when is it flipping back to the grid? Or will it stay on its backup generation all day? These are all the modern day challenges that operators have. Like I said, back in the day when I was in the control room, relatively simple. The risks have compounded. Our margins have gotten thinner. It's become more and more difficult, whether it be the data centers, whether it be the technologies. For example, imagine if I had like dynamic line ratings, maybe I could get more out of these lines. Maybe this wouldn't say 95%. Maybe I could squeeze a couple extra megawatts out of these things. Maybe I would have a stack here or different voltage devices. So hopefully this was fun. Hopefully this got to see a little bit of what's in a control room environment. If you like video games, you probably like this. If you don't like video games, this might give you a lot of anxiety and headaches. But it was a lot of fun. I had a lot of good times at First Energy running these studies and these contingency analysis. So once again, thank you for your time. Hopefully you learned something today. And I think our delicious lunch is here, and help yourself.